depending on your background, object-oriented software might be brand new to you, or you maybe have worked in an object-oriented language before, but it doesn't necessarily mean you've been thinking in objects. It's very possible to program in an object-oriented language and never really use objects, and it's possible to not be in an object-oriented language and think in terms of objects. Object thinking is a strategy for how do you arrange your software. It is sometimes required when you're dealing in certain programming languages, but it's more of a way of modeling the world and thinking of the world. So the very first thing is let's start from the very beginning. So let's just say that you are starting a brand new program, blank, black, nothing's out there. So how do you make anything happen? Well, you can give it a command like "Let there be light." But who creates the light? Where does the light come from? There's just suddenly light there, but we probably have some source of light that's coming up, and that's where object-oriented programming is a little bit different. It is possible in programming languages just to have things happen because somebody has offered print commands or whatever as part of the language that I can go. But a more realistic solution is I go to a light switch and I say, let there be light. And then the light switch turns that light on. And so in object orientation, we want to look at those causal relationships. We want to look at how objects of the real world interact and model those real world objects and their behaviors and what they know and do as part of our software. So you can see in this case, I have a switch and I flip that switch, which then goes to the socket and creates voltage on that socket. And then the lamp also has a switch, and maybe that switch is on, maybe that switch is off. And if there's voltage applied and the switch is on, then the lamp will turn on. And so that allows us to give some nuance there where I can separate each of these different components and model them as their own. A lamp doesn't care where its voltage comes from. It doesn't care if it's a coal powered plant or if you're sitting there chugging along on a exercise bike giving it its voltage. It's going to have light on as long as its switch has been flipped, if you will. And that's a really powerful part of working in objects, the ability to create such models for us. So it is that action of flipping a switch that it belongs to the switch itself. And there's many switches in your house, and you have to flip the right switch to get to that house to be able to create the appropriate voltage, which then also depends on that lamp being on. And that's going to give us the flexibility to have a separate type of switch. And when I flip a switch, it's not going to be unsure of what's turning on and off. Let there be light. Let there be light where? In my house, in my neighborhood, in the entire world. But it gives us that local control. And so we kind of see that in object-oriented languages to some degree already. So if you're talking about, like for example, C++ or Java, we have an object inside of there. If I'm printing to that C out, now it's an object that's listed somewhere in the C world, and the if you haven't programmed in C, the arrow is saying take this string hello and ship it over to this place where I print out. As opposed to Java, which I have this idea of system.out.println, where the out is a specific object to print things to a screen, as opposed to printing them to a file or printing them to the internet or somebody else's screen. I could theoretically have many screens that I could print to. Now Python, if you are coming from that background, has a little bit different world where there is a print statement that's kind of like let there be light. Um, in that print statement, there's actually a default place where it prints to, so there actually is an object notion inside of there. But here's an example where you can see that object a little bit better, where if I say print this string, but take this string and format it. You can see I have a string out there, hello, and the curly brackets, and then that string has a behavior to format that I can ask it to go and add in this case, the word world, where the curly bracket is. I can say hello Tony, hello 7, or in this case, hello world. So the idea of objects extends us beyond this notion of universality into specificity. So where am I printing? What am I printing? How am I going to customize it? What am I going to customize it with is an important part of objects. And that's what I want you to start thinking in terms of objects is no longer just getting who knows what from whom knows what, so who knows where, but I want a specific functionality from a specific source, and that source comes from the object.